Hey YouTube, Joeboy here. So, in some respects, Shanks doesn't make any sense. This man was found in a treasure chest by Goldie Roger in God Valley. He was essentially raised by Roger, was a substantial member of the crew for a long time. No, he never traveled Laugh-Tale, but at any point in time, he probably could have. Honestly, right now, you can make a pretty persuasive argument that Shanks is the strongest person in the world, or has been the strongest person in the world. His mere presence ended the war in Marineford. He broke Green Bull from miles away. It's stated that he fought Kaido leading up to his presence in Marineford. He shows up, Kaido does not. We don't exactly know, but I kind of think Shanks just won. That's the impression that we get in the manga right now. Shanks, biding his time, finally just decides, for whatever reason, hey, I'm gonna find the One Piece now. And it seems incredibly likely that he will. So the question I want to ask, what I want to understand, is why Shanks hasn't. What stopped him? If finding the One Piece is supposed to do all of these things, and Shanks looks up to Goldie Roger, there's got to be a very good reason why Shanks looked at the throne and decided not to sit on it, at least until now. And so there's a potentially obvious answer to this question, one that we've discussed in the past. But as I was pursuing this further, I feel like I understand Shanks, or possibly understand Shanks, a little bit better, and the sad truth of his fate. So this is a video of why Shanks isn't the man to save the world, and I largely think that it is his fault. So I want to make this very clear, guys. I do not think, in any universe, that Shanks is evil. You could potentially make an argument for it. I could as well, but I don't think that it makes sense with everything that we know about Shanks. I can't make it work. So I'm not going to try to, and I'm going to dismiss the possibility, totally. If it happens, I'd probably get shocked into a coma. So I'm operating based on the premise that Shanks did not avoid finding the One Piece because of some attachment to the world government or anything that you can potentially argue there. So there has to be, in my opinion, another reason. And the most obvious speculation, I think one that we talked about before, is that Shanks simply believes that Luffy is the person that is going to accomplish the things that the world needs. Frankly, this makes a lot of sense. We have a conversation between Shanks and Whitebeard where he explains why he saved Luffy. When Luffy was a child, he gave up his arm. He bet it on the future. Throughout the story, we get constant reminders of how much Shanks really likes Luffy and what about Luffy Shanks actually likes. And it seems as though Luffy reminds Shanks a lot of Goldie Roger. Goldie Roger was obviously the pirate that found it all, raised Shanks, and in Goldie Roger's own words, right, he was just too early. It creates the impression that whatever the mission is of finding the poneglyphs, Roger might have been able to accomplish it had he been born at a different time. Now, there could be a lot of specific reasons for this. Recently in the story, the idea of prophecy has been hyped up since Fishman Island and more recently in Wano. They could know exactly when Joy Boy is supposed to reappear. That could be an important event. They could know exactly what devil fruit Joy Boy is supposed to have and know that nobody currently has this devil fruit. They could know about the ancient weapon, and specifically the ancient weapon of Poseidon, who was not yet born. Or the mysterious egg on Gold Roger's ship was not ready to hatch. The reason could be any of these, it could be all of these, and frankly doesn't matter, because the great takeaway here is that Roger seemed to believe that had he been born at the right time, he was the right person. They were simply too early. Now, what exactly made Roger believe that he would have been the right person? I think the answer to this could be multifaceted, but I certainly think that there's a clue to at least one of the components given by Whitebeard in Marineford. Whitebeard looks at Blackbeard and has a thought. He says, "For sure it's not you. You aren't the one that Roger was waiting for." Now, why Whitebeard would have this thought specifically about Blackbeard, to me, is pretty obvious. Marshall D. Teach. Blackbeard is a D, and out of all the Ds that exist in the One Piece world, Blackbeard stands out as like, it's definitely not you. And this also aligns with what Roger himself said. It's like, we came too early. I wonder who's going to be the one who's going to do it. And Roger quips, well, it's going to be my son, of course. His son would also be a D. I would go so far as to speculate, knowing that this conversation existed between Whitebeard and Roger, that Whitebeard was probably told the same thing. And when Ace, Roger's son, happened upon him, Whitebeard might have intended to and tried to make him this person, the person Roger was waiting for. This isn't outright stated, but certain context that surrounds the war in Marineford, specifically Squardo's betrayal, his belief that Ace was just treated different, right? Suddenly it makes more sense. It's not that Whitebeard loved Ace more than his other children, but he might have thought that Ace was more important. So I think that the poneglyphs tell you and told Roger that the one that's going to fulfill the prophecy is a D. And I think that Roger was pretty open about these discoveries to even people outside of his crew or outside of those that traveled with him to Laughtail. I think that he told Whitebeard. I think that it is incredibly likely that he told Shanks as well. I think that Roger wanted them to find this person and potentially help them if they ever needed it. And I think that Shanks gladly took up this duty. One of the most interesting things in early One Piece is why was Shanks at Dawn Island or in Goa Kingdom at the start when Luffy was a child? He was spending weeks there, while at the same time was probably one of the most top-tier pirates in the entire world. He could be anywhere else. He should have been anywhere else. But if he's looking for the one that Roger was waiting for, and he stumbled upon Luffy, who is a D, it's possible that Shanks stayed there to evaluate him as a candidate. Now, it's definitely questionable Shanks losing his arm, right? It's something that as One Piece fans we probably shouldn't think too much about, and it's stated in an interview that that was never Oda's initial intention with Shanks and Luffy. An editor suggested it because we're still in early One Piece, you play the game, right? And they thought that the scene needed more drama. But regardless of whether or not it makes sense, it accomplished a lot. It gave Shanks sort of a defining moment of being able to sacrifice something for the future that he believed in. Basically, Luffy convinced Shanks that he might be the one, so Shanks' arm was worth it. And quite honestly, Luffy eating the Gomu Gomu no Mi may have a lot to do with it. Shanks acquired this fruit for some reason. I think that he knows as well, Roger told him, that this fruit was important. It would play a big role, and that maybe this was Joy Boy's fruit specifically. So the moment Luffy as a D eats the fruit and demonstrates qualities which could be like Roger, I think for Shanks it was relatively easy. And I think that we know today that Shanks was right, but this isn't really a video about Luffy. This is a video about Shanks, understanding him. And from this, I think you start to create an impression about who Shanks is and what he's trying to do. We have some weird scenes recently where Shanks is talking to members of the Gorosei. I think he's basically playing a role where he thinks that he just needs to be there for the moment that this person arrives. And until he does, it's not about the One Piece. It's about maintaining the status quo. But I want to take this video back to the beginning, right? Because the question really I want to address is why didn't Shanks pursue this himself? And I think already we've kind of answered this, right? Shanks is told Roger knows he's looking for a D. And recently, it's highly suggested from the movie Film Red that Shanks is of the Figureland family. Shanks is of Celestial Dragon origin, which would make a lot of sense as Shanks was found in a treasure chest in God Valley. God Valley was this island of celestial dragons where the Figureland family appeared to be important. Shanks as a celestial dragon is probably not a D, right? That's what most people would believe, Shanks included. Shanks can't possibly be the one that Roger was waiting for. In my opinion, guys, he could have been. And it is his own decisions which prevented that future. So I kind of want to tell this as a story because I think that it's going to have more impact. But Shanks was found by Roger, and I believe idolized him more than anybody else. I think that as a kid, Shanks wanted nothing more than to be like Roger, follow in his footsteps and surpass him. Not only did he want this, but I think that others believed it would happen. And who I'm specifically talking about here is I'm talking about Buggy. There's a bit of a rivalry set up between Shanks and Buggy, but Shanks for Buggy was this unsurpassable figure, somebody that Buggy could never beat, would never beat, and would always stand in his way of accomplishing Buggy's dreams. Buggy, just the same as everybody else, wanted everything the world had to offer. Of course he did. But seeing Shanks, this dream seemed so far away. And we get this impression in recent chapters that when Shanks decided not to pursue this dream after Roger had passed, it was a betrayal to Buggy. Somebody who could have taken it all but chose not to is an insult. An insult to everything that Buggy desired to be and wanted. At the same time, Shanks played it off like it was no big deal, and that's Shanks' general energy throughout the story, sort of an acceptance of what is. But I don't think that anything hurt him worse than Roger's belief that a D would be the one. We see a conversation, the last conversation between Roger and Shanks, and I think that a lot of people want to know what specifically was said here, and I'm one of those. And I definitely think that we're actually going to see a continuation of the scene at some point in time. But I wonder if there's going to be somewhat of a twist here, something that you maybe aren't expecting. I think that a lot of people just think Roger tells Shanks, look, I'm dying. I'm going to sacrifice myself, start the next great era of piracy, and, that alone could be enough to make Shanks cry. But what if it's something a little bit deeper than that? What if, during this conversation, Roger told Shanks that there would be somebody someday that he was waiting for that would do it all? And rather than Roger telling Shanks that he thought Shanks was that person, Roger told Shanks to find them. And that was what made Shanks cry, because that's what he wanted. And Roger didn't believe in him. What Shanks has actually accomplished in the story is amazing. He is, for the last maybe 10 years, literally the strongest person in the world, or at least very close to it. He found the devil fruit. He had the Gomu Gomu no Mi in his possession. All he needed to do was eat it. And then maybe Shanks is capable of awakening that fruit and fulfilling that destiny. There is absolutely no doubt in my mind that if Shanks had tried, he could have found the One Piece long ago. But he didn't do it, because he believed the same as Roger, that he wasn't the one. It was impossible for him to be the one, because he is a celestial dragon. However, our understanding of the D initial with recent chapters has changed. As before, it seemed like a birthright, something inherited by blood. But let's be honest, that's never been what One Piece is about. Blood matters very little in the story of One Piece. You make your own family. And this is kind of what's described as Sabo asks Luffy and Ace about their D initial. They both have it. What exactly does it mean? Why is it there? And to this, Ace looks at him and says, hey, you want the D initial too? You can have it. That's all it takes to be a D. All it takes is you have to want it. It never mattered for a moment that Sabo was a noble by birth. And in the same vein, it never should have mattered for Shanks either. He decided that it mattered, and that sealed his fate. In my opinion, there's almost a beautiful parallel between Buggy and Shanks. You look at the two characters, you think they're wildly different, right? But there's at least one thing which bonds them together. They both crushed their own dreams, because neither believed in themselves. And to me, that seems like the lesson and maybe the purpose of the character. Honestly, guys, I really hope that Oda addresses this at some point in the future of the story. The idea, and this is a common trope with prophecies in general, is that people think that they can interpret it, and most often they're wrong. I really hope that when we arrive to the final battle and Shanks has his moments and fights characters, specifically maybe his family, his father, or whoever this god knight figurant is, that sometime during all of this, he takes the initial D. Because as far as I'm concerned, he has always been one. And while things will work out anyway, and maybe it was right that Shanks didn't pursue this path, this was woven into his destiny, at the same time I can't help but think what could have been. But anyway, guys, that's all I have to say today. As always, curious as to what you guys think. Leave your thoughts in the comment section below. Remember to check out my book, The Booms, Volume 1 and 2 is out. Links in the description as well as pinned in the comments. Like the video, subscribe, click the bell to be notified, join the squad, and as always, guys, have a wonderful day.